When you grow up thinking that love comes with a price tag, you stop noticing the receipts being printed behind your back. I was 25 when I sat in the waiting area of St. Elora Medical Center in Charleston. White walls, quiet hum of vending machines, people flipping magazines they weren't reading, and me, surrounded by the smell of antiseptic and betrayal. Brenda, the woman who raised me but never once called me her own unless someone was watching, stood across from me, gripping a folder so tightly that her knuckles turned white. "You're really going to just sit there while your sister fights for her life?" she hissed through her teeth. My sister, Lydia Quinn, the golden girl, the miracle child, the one with the Instagram-perfect life who once told a cafeteria full of kids I was adopted, before I even knew it was true. I didn't respond. My hand stayed in my lap. I knew what was coming. Brenda yanked open the folder and let the pages fly. Medical records, blood types, notes from the transplant team, scattered like confetti on the hospital floor, like proof of my worth, or my lack of it. "She's dying, Avery!" she shouted, voice cracking just enough to make the bystanders flinch. "And you're sitting there, doing nothing, absolutely nothing." Her voice echoed. I mean literally echoed. Off the tile, off the walls, off the backs of people trying not to look. And that's when I felt it, that tightening in my chest. Not fear, not shame. Clarity. I bent slowly, gathering the papers around my shoes. Not out of guilt. I needed them. I needed the truth in black and white because words in my family, they warped, they bent, they shifted depending on who was in the room. A nurse stopped mid-step near the file cart. A receptionist behind the desk pretended her screen needed extra attention. Nobody said a word. That was nothing new. Brenda leaned closer, lowering her voice like a threat in a lullaby. "I didn't raise you to be this cold, this ungrateful. We gave you everything." I looked up, locking eyes with the woman who had told me at 13 that I should be thankful they kept me at all. And I said it, finally. "You gave me what you thought I owed you for." She blinked, 1 second of stillness, the only silence I'd ever earned in that household. Then, like clockwork, the scream returned. "You're letting your sister die!" That line again. Practiced, perfected, designed for maximum volume and impact. But this time, I didn't flinch. Through the narrow window of room 214, I saw Lydia, reclining, cheeks paled by chemo, lips curled in that smug, silent smirk. She didn't wave, didn't mouth thank you, just stared, like a queen watching a servant hesitate. I stood up, tucking the medical papers into my coat. Brenda's rage turned to martyrdom in an instant. "You'll regret this," she said, barely audible. "When she's gone, when we're gone, you'll remember this moment, and you'll hate yourself." I tilted my head. "No," I said softly. "I remember a lot of moments, and none of them looked like family." And with that, I turned. Not toward Lydia. Not toward Brenda. Not even toward the exit. I walked toward the nurses' station, past pity, past performance, past every lie they told loud enough that I'd forget what silence felt like. And in that moment, surrounded by strangers and fluorescent light, I knew. This wasn't about a liver, it was about ownership. And I wasn't theirs to own. I didn't cry in the elevator. I didn't scream in the hallway. What I did was breathe. One breath in, one breath out, mechanical, calculated, like someone learning to use lungs they never really owned. I found a bench in a side alcove behind the pediatrics wing, someplace quiet, where the wallpaper hadn't been updated since 2002. The kind of space no one looked for me in, because no one ever looked for me in the first place. And there, under the flicker of an old light and the hum of vending machines selling sugar and silence, I pulled out my phone. There it was, the email, subject line, National Donor Match Results, confidential, dated November 4th, exactly 5 days after I'd submitted the test. 6 months ago. Before they asked, before they begged, before Brenda started reciting guilt like gospel. I tapped the screen. Negative. Not a match, not marginal, not borderline, just no. I had known. I had known all along. I thought maybe if I didn't say anything, if I just stayed quiet, they'd find another donor. Or maybe, just maybe, they'd never ask at all. But they didn't need the truth. They needed a target. And I was convenient. I hit forward. To Dr. Kensington, C.C. Mallory Boone, subject, reconfirming non-compatibility for record. I added a short line, requesting physical documentation for legal purposes. Legal. That word no longer scared me, it steadied me. I watched the little blue bar send my freedom into cyberspace, and for the first time in weeks, my hands didn't shake. That's when I remembered something else. The intake form. I had listed Brenda as my emergency contact when I took the test, and if she had been emailed the results too, then she knew. She'd known since November. And still, she dragged me into this hospital like a sacrificial lamb. Still, she screamed at me in front of strangers. Still, she held that clipboard with her trembling hand like it carried morality instead of manipulation. She had the answer. She had it the whole time. I felt the anger rise, not like fire, but like stone. Heavy, real, unforgiving. I opened my notes app. Typed. Timeline of events. OCT 30, test submitted privately. NOV 4, results received, not a match. NOV 6, results sent to Brenda Quinn. March 17th, confronted in hospital lobby. March 18th, lied to physician about test never being taken. Then I added one more line, not for them, for me. You cannot give what you don't have. You cannot be loyal to a lie. And you cannot save someone who only ever saw you as a tool. I stared at those words for a while, then hit save. The file title? Not a match, not a mistake. I closed the app and leaned back. The wall was cold, firm. Unlike them, it held me without asking for anything in return. And in that stillness, I knew this wasn't just about clearing my name. This was the beginning of reclaiming it. The hallway outside the nurse's station smelled like lemon disinfectant and something far more sour, pretending. I had only made it a few steps from that bench when I felt it. The shift. Not in the building, not in the air, in me. The kind of shift that doesn't ask permission, just arrives, quiet and final. Then came the shadow. Alan Quinn, my legal guardian, my father, by marriage and by distance. He didn't call my name, he never did. He just stood there, arms crossed, jaw set like stone, blocking the hallway like a human roadblock made of expectations and regret. I stopped. Only because I wanted to believe, for one reckless second, that he might finally say something human. Something that didn't sound like a closing argument. But instead he said the thing. The sentence that would ring louder than any scream. You were always just a selfish mistake. No raised voice, no fire behind the words, just a statement, cold, flat, like it had been sitting on his tongue for years. I blinked. Once. But I didn't cry. I didn't ask him what he meant. That would have given him the dignity of disbelief. Instead, I let the sentence hit like wet cement, heavy but drying fast. I refused to let it sink. Behind him, through the pane of room 214, I saw Lydia again. Still watching, still smirking. Like none of this was surprising, because to her, this was the script. She knew her lines, and she knew mine. But I had forgotten my cue, on purpose. I stepped slightly to the left to avoid brushing Alan's shoulder. Once upon a time, that would have felt like defiance. Now it just felt like self-preservation. I walked past him, heart steady, breath calm. The kind of calm that comes only after the storm has passed and you realize you're still standing, but you're not the same. At the family consultation lounge, I didn't sit. I leaned, against the wall, against years of being told I was lucky to even be here. The wall held me up better than they ever did. And that's when my mind, traitorous and clear, began flipping through old files like they were crime scene evidence. Spring break, 5th grade. Lydia got the Ocean View hotel bed. I got the cot near the balcony door. 16th birthday. She got a used car. I got a sweater. You don't go anywhere anyway, Alan had said. College letter. Mine was never opened. Lydia spilled coffee, they claimed. They always said we didn't have to take you in. Even when I didn't yet know I was adopted, I knew what that tone meant. I was a favor they kept reminding themselves they never wanted. I didn't realize I had sunk to the floor until a nurse passed by and paused. She looked at me. Her eyes were kind, but didn't ask anything, and I was thankful for that, because I didn't want comfort. I wanted clarity. I pulled out my phone again, opened the recording app, pressed record, and spoke. They said I was dramatic, that I made things up, that I couldn't handle reality. But the truth is, I handled it better than they ever did. I just handled it quietly. A pause. The kind where truth settles into your bones like warmth in winter. They taught me to hold my tongue, but they forgot silence can cut too, and today, I'm done letting it shield them. I tapped stop. Saved the file. Named it Statement Draft 1. Because the next time they tried to say I refused, or I overreacted, or I was never enough, I wouldn't need their version of the story. I had my own. The walls in Dr. Kensington's office were lined with framed credentials and quiet tension. He didn't smile when I walked in. Didn't offer me tea, didn't ask how I was feeling. He just gestured to the chair across from his desk. And I knew this wasn't a courtesy meeting. "This'll only take a minute," he said, pulling up a screen. His voice was even, clinical, but his eyes, they weren't detached anymore. They held something new, caution. He turned the monitor toward me. A scanned form, St. Elora Medical Center, medical power of attorney. Name, Avery Quinn. Signed, 4 weeks ago. I stared at it. My name was there, so was my birth date, but the signature? Not mine. Not even close. The curve of the Q was wrong, the slant of the A too tidy. It looked like someone had practiced it, a few times, then pressed hard enough to believe it. I didn't sign that, I said flatly. Dr. Kensington nodded. That's what I thought. He clicked again, bringing up a comparison. My intake forms versus the signature on the POA. The difference was obvious, painfully so. Who submitted it? I asked. He didn't hesitate. Your mother, Brenda Quinn, during Lydia's most recent readmission, said it was time-sensitive. Time-sensitive. That was their favorite word when they were hiding something. Time-sensitive meant, don't look too closely. Time-sensitive meant, we're hoping you'll find out too late. But they were the ones running out of time now. I want a printed copy, I said, already reaching for my bag. Stamped, notarized, and I want it today. You'll have it, he said, already standing. While he stepped out to the admin office, I sat alone with the screen still glowing. They forged my consent. That wasn't just manipulation anymore. That was a crime. And the silence I'd worn like a second skin all these years? It wasn't a shield anymore. It was a weapon. My phone buzzed. Mallory Boone, one of the few friends who didn't need the whole story to take my side. Everything okay? I typed fast. They forged a medical document with my name. 3 dots blinked. Then, do you have proof? I took a photo of the screen, then the file name, then the timestamp, hit send. I'm at the hospital now, waiting for the stamped copy. Good, she replied. You've got them. Now protect yourself, fully. Dr. Kensington returned moments later, manila folder in hand. He placed it gently in front of me. Inside, notarized copies, registry log, and internal access timestamps, all admissible. I nodded quietly, my voice low but firm. Thank you, I'm not letting this disappear. He gave me a look, almost apologetic, but said nothing more. As I stood to leave, I didn't head toward Lydia's room, didn't glance at the familiar corners of the hospital. I went straight to the family lounge, sat down, opened my email. To Hospital Ethics Committee, CC Legal Office Mallory Boone. Subject, formal notice of forgery and medical misconduct. I attached every file, every scan, every detail. Then I wrote, this is not a refusal. This is a correction. My consent was never asked. It was forged. I am not a donor match. I was never eligible. They knew. They lied. And now, there's proof. I hit send. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to explain myself anymore. Not to them, not to the hospital, not to the people who raised me like I was a backup plan with legs. This wasn't about proving I was right. This was about making sure they never had the power to lie again. I wasn't invited. That was the first truth of the morning. No call, no text, no whispered warning from a nurse with sympathetic eyes. Just a quiet announcement on the hospital PA system. Community gratitude ceremony, South Atrium, 10 a.m. I knew better. It wasn't about community, it was about control. When I arrived outside the media room, the glass walls trembled with camera shutters. Reporters adjusted their mics. A few local news stations rolled live. The banner behind the podium read in soft blue letters. St. Elora Medical Center, celebrating compassion in crisis. There they were, Brenda, Alan, Lydia, on video feed from her room. Brenda wore navy, as always, professional, composed. Alan stood beside her, hands clasped like he was attending a funeral he wanted credit for. Lydia's image flickered on the screen, her face pale, lips soft, smile rehearsed. I stood just outside the line of sight. Invisible again, erased again. Brenda cleared her throat. We're honored to share that our daughter, Lydia, is on the road to recovery thanks to the generous gift of an anonymous liver donor. Anonymous. My stomach tightened. She continued, voice dripping with staged sincerity. This experience reminded us of the power of family, of standing together in hardship, of unconditional love. I stared. Not even a glance in my direction. Not one syllable acknowledging the weeks of pressure, the forged forms, the emotional carnage they left behind. They were rewriting history in real time. Alan stepped forward next, his voice deeper, steadier. We ask that the focus remain on healing, not division. Let this be a moment of unity. That was it. The moment I realized they weren't going to stop. They would bury me in broad daylight, behind flowery words and filtered smiles, and expect me to stay quiet. But this time, I had the receipts. I stepped forward. Slow, calm, no shaking hands, no second guesses. The security guard near the entrance blinked, recognizing me, but he didn't move. Maybe he sensed it. This wasn't a scene. It was a statement. I walked straight to the podium. The mic was still live. Brenda's face paled. Alan turned, confused. Lydia froze on screen, her video flickering just slightly. I placed the manila folder on the podium, opened it. I won't take your time, I said. Just your attention. The room went still. My name is Avery Quinn. You didn't hear that name today, but it matters, because this is the name they left out of the story. Flashbulbs popped. A few reporters leaned forward. I held up the first page. This is my donor test result from November. It confirms I am not a biological match to Lydia Quinn. Second page. This is the medical power of attorney, forged using my name, submitted without my knowledge. Gasps. I wasn't done. Third page. And this is a screenshot of the message that proves Lydia and my mother knew. They had this result. They chose to hide it. Brenda stumbled backward, hand on her chest. Lydia's video feed blinked, her expression suddenly unreadable. I was adopted, they never told me, and I was brought here not as a daughter, not even as a sister, but as an insurance policy. I exhaled. They tried to use my body to patch their lies. They erased me, but I am not invisible, and I am done being quiet. As I stepped back from the mic, I heard it. A collective rustle. Not applause. Not outrage. Recognition. Behind me, Brenda's knees buckled. She collapsed into a chair. Whether from shame or performance, I didn't care. Alan stood stiff, jaw clenched. Lydia's video feed froze, and then went black. A reporter called out, "Ms. Quinn, are you seeking justice or revenge?" I turned once, just enough for my voice to carry. Neither. I just don't want to explain myself to them, ever again. And I meant it. As I walked out of that room, folder in hand, head upright, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt clean. For once, the air around me didn't carry someone else's expectations. It was mine. And they? They had to sit with the silence they thought they owned, now turned against them. The hospital halls felt colder after the press conference. Not because of the air conditioning, but because the mask had cracked, and everyone knew it. No more pretending, no more performances, just raw air and quiet calculation. I had barely stepped into the main corridor when a voice called behind me. "Ms. Quinn, Dr. Kensington would like to see you again, right away." Again. I followed the nurse through a side hallway I hadn't walked before. Carpeted, private, lined with artwork meant to soothe the wealthy and the worried. Dr. Kensington was waiting outside a consultation room. He didn't speak until the door clicked shut behind us. No windows, just a table, 2 chairs, and the kind of silence that made truth echo louder. He sat first, fingers laced, eyes steady. "Thanks for coming back," he said. "There's something we found in your file." I didn't move, didn't blink. I was done reacting. He turned the monitor. "We reran your compatibility test, twice, just to be thorough, and there's a genetic marker conflict." A beat passed. Then 6 words that cracked something ancient in my spine. "You are not biologically related at all." It didn't come like a punch, it came like a tide. Silent, certain, final. I let out a laugh, not joy, not mockery, release. The kind of laugh that leaks out when something that's always been off finally clicks into place. "That explains everything," I whispered. The cot on vacations, the sweater on birthdays, the way Brenda looked at Lydia like a daughter and at me like a receipt. It wasn't imagined. It was engineered. Dr. Kensington didn't speak. He just waited, like he'd seen this moment before in others. But this wasn't a movie breakdown. This was a revelation. "I'll need every document," I said, voice steady. "Digital, physical, confirmations, chain of custody, everything." "You'll have it," he promised. "Do you want to talk to someone?" he asked gently. I shook my head. "No, I'm going to talk to everyone." When I stepped out of that room, I wasn't shaking. I wasn't sad. I was aligned. Like the universe had finally rotated me into the right place. Not with them, not against them, just outside of them. I walked to the media corridor. It was quiet now. The press had packed up. The banners half folded. The podium still stood, but the mic had been turned off. I didn't go there. Instead, I took the long hallway to the east atrium, the hospital garden. Spring was still fighting to bloom in Charleston. The magnolias were stubborn, but a few petals had cracked open, refusing to wait. I found a bench near the koi pond, opened the manila folder again, reviewed each line, each signature, each stamped timestamp like a soldier memorizing coordinates before a final strike. Then I opened a new document, a sworn affidavit. No metaphors, no emotion, just facts. I, Avery Quinn, confirm that I was tested for liver donation compatibility in November of last year and was deemed not a match. This result was sent to Brenda Quinn and later concealed. Furthermore, genetic analysis confirms I share no biological ties with Lydia Quinn or either parent. I ended with one final sentence, not necessary for the record, but necessary for me. This is not a daughter's rebellion. It's a woman's refusal to be erased. I hit save, then leaned back on the bench. The koi moved lazily under the surface, as if they knew peace wasn't about stillness. It was about no longer being hunted. For the first time since I was a child, I didn't wonder if I belonged. I knew now I didn't, and that was no longer a wound. It was freedom. The hospital garden was quiet that evening. The kind of quiet that doesn't come from absence, but from exhaustion. Like the trees themselves had seen too much and were finally done pretending. I arrived at 4:55. Lydia was already there. She sat alone on a curved bench under the birch trees, a gray hoodie pulled over her thinning hair, hospital-issued socks barely brushing the gravel. She didn't stand when she saw me, didn't smile, just patted the bench beside her. I didn't sit. The silence between us wasn't awkward, it was historic. I waited. She spoke first, her voice low, uninflected. They only kept you in case I needed something. No apology, no shame, just fact. She didn't flinch, neither did I. I always thought you knew, she added. I nodded slowly. No, but I always felt it. The wind brushed through the branches overhead, making the leaves whisper like gossip we no longer cared about. Lydia leaned back, her head resting against the bench. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I looked at her, really looked. Her cheeks hollow, her gaze dry, her voice steady. She meant it. Good, I replied, because I'm not offering it. She didn't react. Maybe she expected it. Maybe she needed to hear it said aloud. Another pause. Longer this time. The kind where people used to be close, but now the only thing left to share was the space between words. Then I added softer. I hope you find something better than this. That made her turn, just slightly, eyes narrowed, not in anger, in surprise. I wasn't cursing her. I wasn't raging. I wasn't throwing the past back in her face. I was walking away. And that was something she'd never expected me to do without permission. Because what they did to both of us, I continued, doesn't deserve to follow us forever. Lydia looked down at her hands. For a second, I thought she might cry. She didn't. I didn't expect her to. I adjusted the strap of my bag. My voice didn't shake. This isn't a beginning, it's just an end, and some endings don't need closure, just distance. Then I turned. No dramatic pause, no backward glance. Because that was what they taught me, to always second-guess my exits. And this time, I left like I'd earned it. Back through the garden gates, down the cobblestone path, past the koi pond that had heard every lie and watched it all unfold. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just walked. And with every step away from Lydia Quinn, I left behind the version of myself that once needed her to see me. Now I saw myself. And that was enough. The courthouse in downtown Charleston didn't feel dramatic. It smelled like paper and old carpet. The lights flickered with no sense of occasion. But for me, it was everything. I sat across from a clerk in a khaki vest and sensible shoes. She barely glanced up as she slid the paperwork across the counter. Name change forms, last page's signature, processing takes 2 weeks. I nodded. No need to ask questions. I had already answered all of them for myself. Name to keep, Avery Quinn. Not because they gave it to me, but because I'd earned it back, on my own terms. Not a placeholder, not a prop in their story, just me. As I stepped out onto the sidewalk, the South Carolina sun pressed warm and quiet on my shoulders. Downtown was humming as usual, cars inching forward, someone singing faintly on the corner, a dog barking 3 blocks away. But inside me? Stillness. I walked to a print shop 2 doors down and signed the final affidavit. The last legal tie securing my name to myself. It didn't feel victorious. It felt honest. That night after dinner, I opened my mail. Most of it was nothing. Bank statements, flyers, a pizza coupon addressed to current resident. But one envelope caught my eye. No return address. Just a postmark, Flagstaff, Arizona. Inside was a single folded sheet of lined notebook paper. The handwriting was unfamiliar, small, deliberate, a little shaky. Hi, Avery. I saw your story. I'm adopted too. I didn't know I could say no either. Thank you for showing me it's okay to speak up. I'm 17. You gave me something I didn't know I was allowed to have. Choice. No name, no signature, just truth. I stared at the words until they blurred, not from tears, but from the sheer weight of being seen. After decades of being erased, gaslit, overwritten, someone saw me. Not as a mistake, not as a backup, as proof. I folded the note gently and slid it into the drawer of my desk. Not the one labeled evidence, but the one marked keepsakes. Because this wasn't a weapon. It was a beginning. Later that night, I sat on my balcony, the city stretching below me like a map I finally knew how to read. The lights blinked, the streets whispered, and for the first time, I didn't feel like a ghost in someone else's story. No camera crews, no headlines, just peace. And maybe that was the greatest defiance of all, to live quietly, without asking permission. Sometimes the hardest truth to accept is the one we've always suspected. That love can be conditional, that family can fail us, that silence doesn't mean peace, it just means we stop trying to be heard. But silence can end. And truth, it never needed permission to speak. Avery's story isn't about revenge, it's about reclaiming the space to exist, fully, loudly, and freely. Have you ever felt erased by the people who were supposed to protect you? Let us know in the comments below. Your story matters, because you matter. And if this video moved you even just a little, subscribe for more real, emotional stories like this one. This is Sweet Revenge, Happy Ending, where truth gets the final word.